here to steal money.
They sold 9.64% of the shares in the newly acquired company to Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa.
Welcome to African United. Each one teach one. Please subscribe to our channel and hit notification button for the future updates. Thank you very much in advance.
Yesterday, Deputy President Cyril Ramaphosa and his friends at Glencore negotiated tenders to supply Eskom with coal. Today, he has a total control over Eskom decision through the war room. Decisions are made secretively. Coal is purchased with total regard of procurement procedures and inflated prices are paid. Workers' salaries have been stagnant for the last 2 decades while capital accumulation increases drastically.
On a point of order.
Deal with Glencore to supply.
No, honorable member, honorable
The
Shivambo.
president is selling to
Honorable
himself on the
Shivambo,
other side. It's a fact.
You've made about how Cyril has made money through Shanduga and Glencore in the deal of supplying coal to Eskom. And now he sits in the war room to determine more money for himself. That's a fact.
Honorable member.
You can't ask a member to withdraw the fact. This parliament, you are rendering it useless.
Honorable.
We cannot tell the truth here. Every time you tell the truth of how Cyril connived with capital to milk the state money, he's doing that. That is his business. He's here to steal money. We're not going to agree to withdraw that. We're not going to agree to withdraw that.
No, honorable members, wait a minute.
Glencore did not conduct a due diligence on Optimum prior to the acquisition of the company and the contract. Nor had they bothered to acquaint themselves with how the coal supply agreement worked. This was in page 3 of his statement. Sorry, in page 3 of his statement. Instead of conducting due diligence and understanding how the coal supply agreement worked, they did something extraordinary, Chairperson. They sold 9.64% of the shares in the newly acquired company to Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, a political heavyweight, and made him chairman of the newly acquired company. That was a strategic decision to use the former Secretary General of the African National Congress and former Secretary General of the National Union of Mine Workers, a member of the National Executive Committee of the ANC at the time. They knew that the profitability of the company could only come from a successful renegotiation of the coal price and ignoring by Eskom of the penalties that were accumulating at the time. Mr. Ramaphosa was their bet. The profitability of Optimum was therefore dependent on the peddling of political influence and the extent to which Glencore would be able to exert pressure on Eskom directors and management, and not on the fundamentals of the company that they had acquired. This, in my opinion, was the source of Glencore's problems. They had made their bed and needed to lie on it. It was unfair and arrogant of them to demand, as they were doing, that Eskom should effectively pay for the irresponsible manner in which they had tied themselves into the proverbial knot. You observed, Chairperson, that on my arrival at Eskom, there was, and I quote you, a complete change of attitude on the part of Eskom on the deal that had been proposed and had been supported by various levels of management, close quote. You were referring to the deal that had been entered into by Eskom management and Glencore to save Glencore's skin from the consequences of purchasing a company having not conducted due diligence. Optimum demanded that the price of coal be increased to 530 rand per ton and that the penalties of 2 billion should be written off. Somebody mentioned 530 the other day, and Advocate Selega jumped and said it was not 530, it was 400 and something. But Advocate Selega, when they came to me for the first time, the figure was 530. It may or may not have been written, but that is what I clearly recall. And they later on reduced it to what you refer to. But the original demand, at least to me, it was 530 rand per ton from 150. It was their opening negotiating position. 530 rand from 150 rand. An increase from 150 rand to 530 rand per ton would have meant a transfer of 6 billion rand from Eskom to Glencore over a period of 3 years, 2015 to 2018. Add to this the 2 billion write-off of the penalties that they were asking for. The amount that Glencore wanted Eskom to pay for their original mistake of not doing due diligence was 8 billion rand. 8 billion rand, Chairperson. Your observation that there was a complete change of attitude on the part of Eskom on the deal that had been proposed and had been supported by various levels of management when I arrived at Eskom is absolutely correct. I'm not ashamed of this change of attitude that occurred. When I arrived, I was having Eskom's interests and those of the country at heart. What was happening was wrong on many fronts. It was literally going to financially ruin Eskom. But there was an added issue to this. The Glencore position would have seen an inequitable situation. The poor and most vulnerable in the country would subsidize the dealings of the rich. There was no way that I could, with a clean conscience, attend public gatherings and meetings and shout from the rooftops that Soweto residents needed to pay their debt to Eskom, when I was allowing international corporates to disadvantage Eskom on many fronts. When I arrived at Eskom, a de facto board of the company had been established outside of the company in the form of a war room in the presidency. Management had to report to this war room. Ms. Mazietzi Mokolo was here yesterday, and she explained, Chairperson, to you how the war room demanded meetings with management and officials of the Department of Public Enterprises every Friday at 7 a.m. Every Friday, they had to present reports. So when I got there, the biggest activity that was happening at Eskom was preparing war room reports. From Wednesday, we must start preparing the reports, make sure that they are ready for Friday, 7 a.m. Then it's weekend. Then Monday, Tuesday we work. And then Wednesday we start preparing reports again. It was an untenable situation. There was a board, a de facto board, that was outside of the company. And what is even more strange, Chairperson, is that there has been evidence here, including by Ms. Mokolo, who was here yesterday, that members of the board, the legitimate board, the legal board of Eskom, were not seeing those war room reports. So, management was reporting to the war room. But it gets even better, Chairperson. The Deputy President of the Republic, Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, was the chairperson of the war room. He was, in fact, the de facto chairperson of Eskom, the de facto chairperson of a de facto board that was outside the company. Under my leadership, and the leadership of the leadership and technical expertise of people like Mr. Koko and other engineers, the engineers at ESCOM, the guardians as they call them, the employees of ESCOM, who, when I was there, became very invigorated and determined to end load shedding. We defeated load shedding in August 2015. On the 8th of August 2015, we stopped load shedding. And we never had load shedding again for 3 years after I had left ESCOM. Load shedding came back to ESCOM after Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa, following the 1 billion rand Nasrec conference, was appointed president of the country. That's when load shedding came back. And after he was appointed president of the country, and he in turn appointed the smooth-talking and dictatorial Pravin Gordhan as Minister of Public Enterprises. The less I say about Pravin Gordhan, the better. As you see, Chairperson, despite his smooth talking, public enterprises are failing, and it appears that they are on a course to be sold to private interests. My suspicion is that, like the javelin, they will be thrown over the fence and be caught at the later stage. It's just a suspicion. To put it mildly, Chairperson, the situation made me sick. I found the behavior of Glencore and that of Mr. Cyril Ramaphosa to be revolting. Mr. Ramaphosa must have known about what Glencore sought to achieve. He was the chairperson of the company that was bought without a due diligence. He was chairperson when the penalties were imposed. He was still chairperson of Optimum when the unlawful agreement that sought to increase the price of coal from 150 and set aside the penalties was negotiated with certain members of ESCOM staff in 2014. He knew that he was being used for his political standing and hoped to influence matters to Glencore's favor. He had an interest in the matter, 9.64% interest. He is not naive, and he has been dealing with these corporates which gave him his riches.